Good morning. This morning we're going to talk about Pericles, who, you might say, one of Shakespeare's latest plays that will be performed at the Arden Theatre between the 2nd and 5th of April. And to talk to us about it is director John Moss. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Wendy.
So, in a few words, because I don't think many people know, tell us the story of Pericles.
Okay, well, the story of Pericles is about a young man who engages on a series of elaborate journeys across locations in the Mediterranean in search of an understanding of what his role as the leader of a place called Tyre is. So it's a journey of discovery about leadership. It's also a story of discovery about relationships, and particularly father-daughter relationships, because the play includes both an extremely unpleasant relationship that involves incest and a very jolly, pleasant father-daughter relationship. And the one Pericles has with his daughter is complicated and resolved during the final scenes of the play. So political power and father-daughter relationships are two of the main themes of the play, and the journeys Pericles goes on help him to explore the meanings of both those things.
Okay, sounds quite heavy. Is there humour in it?
Yeah, there is humour in it. With the multiple locations that it has, each place that Pericles goes to has a different character. And in some of those places, the humour comes from them being jolly, happy places where people are having fun, if you like. In some cases, it comes from poking fun at negative attitudes that people have. So, for example, there's an interesting location involving some scenes in a brothel where there is some humour around how the brothel is run and organised and the characters who live and work there, while at the same time some serious questions are asked about brothels and how women are exploited by them. So the play does manage to combine humour with exploring the serious themes that it does.
And so why have you chosen to direct Pericles this year at the Arden Theatre?
Okay, I've chosen Pericles because it's a play that I've fallen in love with over the last few years, and one that I didn't know well until there were a couple of really good productions of it. One at the Wanamaker Theatre, the Globe's indoor theatre in London, and one that the RSC did just this last year. And they revived it because I think there is a new recognition in this century of how good a play it was and is. It was Shakespeare's most performed play in the years after his death, which is something that always surprises people who don't know it and haven't heard about it. And I think that's because it has some remarkable experimental features, which is really interesting to find in a writer late in his career. So Shakespeare's exploring things like his approach to storytelling, and there is a very significant narrator in Pericles, the character Gower, from whom Shakespeare got some of the story from. It also challenges the traditional view about what plays should be, the idea of the unities, i.e. that action should take place in one place, in a limited time scale, and so on. So with traveling across a period of 15 years and going to, as I've said, all these multiple locations. It's really innovative, and I think it's exciting to find a writer at that stage in his career being so creative. So it will surprise people because of it's unusual, and that's one of the things that has really attracted me to it. The other thing that is specific to the Arden is that the Arden is a beautifully intimate theatre, and I think absolutely ideal for a play that does centre on storytelling. It feels like a place in which stories are told. And related to that is, I haven't mentioned yet much, there are the sea journeys that Pericles goes on are very significant, and a number of them involve storms and disasters of one kind or another. And I also like the fact that Faversham as a place has got a kind of nautical connection with the boatyards, and a feeling that it is on the edge, and all the places that Pericles visits are on the edge of the sea. So I feel there's a resonance between the town and the play that I hope we'll be able to bring out.
So how will you be portraying the movement through time and space and the randomness and chaos which ensues?
Yeah, well, you've mentioned travel through time. That's something that is very much a focus that I want to extend beyond the 14 years of what we know about Pericles' journey as it's kind of set out in the play. So one of the things that we're going to do in the production is explore the idea that the different places Pericles visits might be in different time periods as well as different spaces. And that's partly, I think, to help the audience get the sense of what we're trying to say about each place that he goes to. But I think it's also to convey the way in which the character of each place, in terms of its political climate, will kind of link to something that I hope the audience will be able to identify with quickly. And I think the other thing is about that is that the whole thing is like something like the Odyssey, where somebody goes on a voyage and has these different significant encounters. But one of the contemporary equivalents that we have to that is Doctor Who, where Doctor Who travels from one place to another, has a problem to solve in a particular location, but there's also a kind of overarching narrative that connects up with what he's doing with his particular companions at the time. And Pericles works very much like that. So I think the notion of connecting time travel with journeys is something that an audience will be used to, but might also be surprised to find in a Shakespeare production. So I hope people will enjoy that aspect of what we do.
Sounds absolutely fascinating, bringing Doctor Who relevance into Shakespeare. So, what role, if any, do the gods play in Pericles?
Well, that's a really good question, because one of the things that's kind of characteristic of the late plays is that they're not seen as being either entirely comedic and as comedies with entirely happy endings that kind of human actions work to bring about, and nor are they tragic in the sense that those human actions lead to some disastrous outcome of one kind or another. They're often called romances, and what that is to suggest is not the idea of romance like romantic love, but the idea of a story in which some kinds of magical or divine intervention take place to bring about the conclusions that we reach. So there is one very specific intervention by one of the Greek gods in the play, and I think I should invite you to come and see it to find out what that is, because it's near the end and I don't want to do too many spoilers. But there is a kind of mood of magic in some other scenes earlier in the play as well. And so I think what Shakespeare is acknowledging in his late plays is that sometimes life can go one way or another, and it can take us towards a happy conclusion or a sad conclusion. And it may be not entirely in human control which one of those endings we achieve. And I think that's what he's saying by saying, okay, so sometimes there's a force that is beyond our control that influences the outcomes that we experience in relation to our own life's journey. So the answer is very important, and again, a significant part of what is special about this play, and indeed the group of late plays that it's part of.
Okay, so we talked about seafarers and shipwrecks and adventure. Do pirates play a role in the play?
Yes, there are some pirates. They don't appear for very long, as indeed a number of characters don't. There's a vast array of, I think it's 59 characters in total in the play, and the pirates appear just in a couple of scenes. But what they do is quite significant. They kidnap one of the characters and really are engaged in what we would now recognize as human trafficking. And so they draw attention to a very serious issue. In terms of the plot development, what that enables Shakespeare to do is to take a key character from one of the locations that I've talked about and transport her somewhere else, so that her experience is developed in a new context, and he's able to show her growth as a character through these new experiences that she has, challenging the situation that the pirates put her in. So yes, but there's an array of other kinds of exotic characters as well, like someone who's a kind of a cross between a doctor and a magician. For example, there are medieval knights. There are characters who, as I've indicated, are very good at leading the countries that they rule, and ones who are absolutely appalling. So you get very different kinds of leaders in the play, but also a wide variety of very ordinary characters, including fishermen, as well as the people who run the brothel that I've mentioned, and other people who are not, if you like, from the higher echelons of society. So it's a very rich array of people Shakespeare presents us with here.
Okay, so you've talked about that in Pericles we learn about human trafficking and incest. Are there other elements that are relevant to today's society so that people will relate to the story?
Yeah, I think the other thing I've kind of touched on already is this the issue about power, and I think something that is very relevant to what we know is going on in the world at the moment is that we're really interested in the relationship between how people behave in their private life and how they behave in their public life if they are in a leadership role. And we debate, don't we, endlessly about whether it's really significant. If someone's private life is bad, does that mean they shouldn't be in a leadership position? I think what Shakespeare suggests in this play is actually that it does matter, because the people who are unpleasant in various ways in their private lives are the worst leaders. But I think the exploration of that theme is a very important one for us now. And then beyond the issue about incest, the interest that the play has in father-daughter relationships is also a particular angle on relationships between men and women generally, where power lies in those relationships. And of course, that is another very important topic for us in the 21st century.
Okay. So are any of the characters in Pericles are echoes of earlier Shakespearean plays?
Yeah, I mean, I think Shakespeare is famous for reinventing other people's work, which sometimes people say, well, nowadays we might call it plagiarism, but the culture of the time when Shakespeare was writing was that people constantly reinvented each other's work and collaborated on doing that. And Shakespeare very clearly takes themes and ideas from earlier plays and reuses them. So one very good example of that, to make a reference to a play that will be familiar to many, is there's a relationship between two characters called Cleon and Dionysa, which is a very strong echo of the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. And we see a man who is struggling with his decisions about leadership and what he should and shouldn't do, and a wife who is more ambitious for herself and her family and more inclined to take the lead on doing despicable things. And so I think that's one example, but I think almost any play that you'll be able to find some kind of echo of it somewhere in Pericles. It's just the richness and variety of it, and the way in which Shakespeare is drawing on so many things includes him drawing on his own work.
So, but talking about his own work, the authorship of Pericles is often examined and argued that perhaps George Wilkins played a role in it. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, well, that's right. And I'm always amused by this poor chap, George Wilkins, his name. Because for me, I don't know, it sounds like a high street butcher's shop or something, George Wilkins, rather than someone who might be writing plays. But yes, the most academics these days think that George Wilkins wrote a considerable part of the beginning of the play, and there's some disagreement about how far his writing runs through it. And the main reason that academics think this is because these days, with all the various kinds of computer-based textual analysis you can do, the conventions of language that are used in the first part of the play are somewhat different from those in the second half and towards the end. People also argue this in terms of what they would expect to find Shakespeare in his mature years doing. And so part of the argument about that is that Act 5 in particular has the most extended and perhaps deepest emotional exchanges when Pericles is reunited with his daughter. So people argue this is the work of the master, if you like, at his peak, showing how a really rich relationship can develop in a scene. However, there are some critics who think Shakespeare wrote all of it, and their argument is based on the view that the play, despite its immense canvas, is very coherent and strongly structured around some of the key themes that we've been talking about, Wendy. So, certainly the father-daughter one runs from the very first scene to the very last scene and is explored from a number of different angles as the play progresses. So I think I'm a bit agnostic about it because I can see both arguments. The other thing I'd just add is that the more scholarship that is done on Shakespeare's work in the 21st century using these kinds of computer-based techniques that I've mentioned, the more it's recognized that many plays that we thought were single authorship, whether Shakespeare's or somebody else's, are actually probably multiple authorship works. So I think there is a strong likelihood here that Shakespeare, at the very least, it was controlling, the structure of the play and its key elements. And if Wilkins contributed to it, that doesn't mean it's kind of a fragmented or broken play. What it means is that's a further demonstration of the artistic practice of the time. People work together to write stuff.
Like major artists had studios of their talented students producing work, which was inspired and mentored. Interesting. So Pericles is not a curriculum play for those students studying literature at secondary school. But Sue, how relevant for a student to come and watch Pericles is it if you're studying, for instance, Romeo and Juliet, or Hamlet or Macbeth, or Macbeth more than Hamlet, which everybody thinks is too long to study? What is the sort of, how would a student benefit from coming to see Pericles?
Okay, well, I think the bottom line answer to that is always that it will enrich your understanding of one play to see how things are both similar and different in another. And something that school students and students of literature at higher levels often are asked to think about is the category that the plays that they are studying is in or are in. I've touched on the idea that Pericles is a romance and has got elements of tragedy and comedy in it. And I think one thing watching Pericles will help you to do is to think about what you understand tragedy or comedy to mean if you're studying one of those, and therefore how it is and isn't like a play like Pericles. So I think it helps you to understand genre, if you like. Another thing is the point about the themes of the play, power and love, and certainly those two particularly figure strongly in Romeo and Juliet and Macbeth in different kinds of ways. So again, what you've got is an opportunity to think about different ways in which the same writer is exploring a theme that you're trying to understand and unpack in a particular play that you're looking at. And again, I think those contrasts help you to really define more clearly what's going on in the play that you're studying. So I think it's things like that, compare and contrast, if you like, and get see your play in a bit more of the context that it was written in, and the culture that surrounds it. So those kinds of things.
So we've talked about why a student should come and see it and how they would benefit. What are our audiences going to come away with from seeing Pericles? Are they going to be entertained, moved? I know we've talked about the main topics, but what would you hope that an audience sits and listens and comes away with?
I hope one thing they're going to get from it is, in terms of the experience in the theatre and watching the play, I hope one of the things that they're going to do is to relax into the extraordinary variety of it and enjoy that. So there are endless surprises, and we might have given away one or two of them in this discussion, but there are plenty more. So I think it's a play that you experience as an epic, because of that diversity, and there will be music and dance and fights and unexpected arrivals and departures alongside some of the ones that we've talked about. So there's always something new happening, and there's also, as I've said, this marvelous storytelling experience with the narrator Gower, who has some wonderful lines, but also helps you to steer you through the experience of the play. And that, I think, is something that is unusual, and I think adds to the variety and the interest of this play. Yes, and we've said there are funny bits, there are some quite troubling bits. You used the word moved, and I think the last act in particular is strongly moving when Pericles gets reunited with his daughter, and the way in which that has an effect on Pericles, which is transformational. Because one thing we haven't talked about, and I should have mentioned earlier really, is that the journey Pericles goes on is also a mental health journey, and he gets to a very bad place at one point in the play. So it is moving to see how Marina, his daughter, helps him to recover. That, I think, is a very powerful scene, and I hope people will be moved by that and feel, again, some connection to things that we are concerned about in our own society and in our own time.
Great. John, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. So, a bit like Doctor Who of the 1600s, Pericles, Prince of Tyre, will be on the Arden Theatre between the 2nd and 5th of April. There is a matinee on the Saturday at 2 o'clock. You can get your tickets by going to the Arden Theatre website, ardentheatre.org.uk, and we all hope you will enjoy it. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Wendy.